The 2025 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences honored Joel Mokyr, Philippe Aghion, and Peter Howitt for their groundbreaking research on innovation-led growth. Their distinct yet complementary work reveals how technological progress and competitive dynamics drive long-term economic prosperity. Joel Mokyr studies how history and culture shape innovation, highlighting the role of knowledge institutions and idea exchange. He argues that growth needs an open, educated and experimental environment to thrive.
For economics to work without economic history is like an evolutionary biologist without paleontology. And if you don't have paleontology, you just miss 99.5% of all the species that ever walked this earth. And so I teach economic history in some sense keeping that in mind, that we can observe in the past economic systems, economic societies, economic interactions that we don't have anymore.
Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt connect growth to creative destruction, where new innovations replace old ones through the Schumpeterian model.
We built a new paradigm which we could compare with data that we could develop, which has now become the dominant paradigm in growth economics. And what is the idea behind the paradigm? The first idea is that long-term growth comes from cumulative innovation, where each innovator builds on the foundation of previous innovations. We always stand on the shoulders of giants who preceded us. We always stand on the shoulders of giants. So that's the first idea. Innovation is cumulative. The second idea is that innovation doesn't fall from the sky. It results from investments by entrepreneurs who pursue innovative investments, particularly in research and development, because they hope that by innovating, they will generate monopoly profits, innovation revenue.
Their model shows how competition among firms sparks innovation and how policies like R&D support and education reform sustain growth. Economic dynamism, defined as the constant renewal of ideas and firms, is key to lasting prosperity.
It's particularly important to recognize that producing the technological advances that result in economic growth requires cooperation between university research, business research, and development.
Together, their work forms a full theory of innovation-driven growth. Mokyr explains how societies become fertile ground for ideas, while Aghion and Howitt show how innovation fuels lasting prosperity through competition. Their insights guide policy on fostering innovation, investing in education and R&D, and balancing stability with change. The Economic Brief, DD India. Well, Prasenjit Basu and Anil Padmanabhan continue to be with us. Mr. Basu, let me start with you. The past is a data set, is what they are saying. What we make of it can influence the future. But how important is economic history, would you say, for innovators and for entrepreneurs?
Well, Mokyr is the economic historian, and he focuses on the role of institutions in fostering innovation. The other two, Aghion and Howitt, basically are believers in the idea of creative destruction, particularly having open economies and allowing the flow of new ideas and innovation to play a big role in driving change and positive change. So typically what happens with creative destruction is that, for instance, if you look at electric vehicles, they're a classic example of creative destruction currently occurring in the global auto industry. So in India, we have the likes of Tata and Mahindra gaining market share through their new EV products in a relatively stable market. So you have a stable market, an innovator enters through, and it causes what is called creative destruction. Some of the older players begin to die out, and the new innovator gains market share and often gains some monopoly profits or duopoly profits from being the first mover.
Yes.
So Tesla, for instance, in the global EV market, was a classic creative destruction force. And now we see that occurring in India with the likes of Tata and Mahindra. So, and similarly, you can look at different sectors. The use of scrap metal in steel production was a form of creative destruction. A new technology emerged that altered the existing structure of the global steel industry. So this is a creative process. There is some destruction in that process, but you also get positive change emerging, and that dynamism that emerges from the ability of new players to come in with innovative ideas imparts a great dynamism to the economy. It's very different from the pre-1991 economy in India, for instance, where very little creative destruction was possible because existing players in every market segment were protected from overseas entry, from imports, as well as from domestic competition. So that was the exact opposite of creative destruction that we had pre-1991.
Sure. Mr. Padmanabhan, Howitt, he says that, growth demands collaboration. That means we need universities and industry and all that to work together for quicker innovation and creative destruction. So is this actually happening? I mean, who takes the lead? What do you think?
See, Mark, this year's award actually flies in the face of what we are seeing transpiring in the United States. Under the leadership of President Trump, it is actually becoming destructive, not creatively destructive, but destructive is the right word. It's regressive economic policies and is exactly the obverse of what these three Nobel laureates were talking about. And the second half of this award was given in the legacy of the person who originated this, coined this term creative destruction. It's an economist called Schumpeter. And his marquee book was, I forget the exact title, but it was all about capitalism. So in capitalism, the entire idea is where market forces dominate, and there is a kind of, like in life, there's a cycle of creation, destruction, and creation. But each round creates a more productive and a more creative economy. But what we are seeing in the United States is exactly the opposite. Now, to answer your question as to who takes the lead, it's inevitably the government. Even in the United States, it is a government which took the lead in creating this academic industrial complex. Okay. And subsequently, the private sector got its own legs and it gathered momentum. If you're asking whether the same can be done in India, definitely. And it is already happening. If you look at our top-rung IITs, say IIT Madras or IIT Mumbai or IIT Calcutta, IIT Kanpur, all of them are beginning to create this academic industrial complex. So it's beginning to gather legs in India too, but not at the scale as it is in the United States.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Prasenjit Basu and Anil Padmanabhan. Thank you for joining us and putting that into perspective for us. The book that Schumpeter wrote is Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy. We leave it there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll move